labor force participation rate is calculated by taking the population in the labor force and dividing it by the civilian, non-institutionalized population age 16 and over. The population in the labor force includes everyone who currently has a job or is out of work but actively looking for a job. The civilian, non-institutionalized population includes all people except for those who are legally unable to work, including those under 16 and people in institutional facilities such as prison inmates and nursing home residents. There is no upper age limit in this calculation. Kentucky has a labor force participation rate of 59%. This is 4 points lower than the national average and the 8th lowest in the country. Among the states with low labor force participation rates, most are located in the southern part of the United States and struggle with pockets of extreme rural poverty. Kentucky's low labor force participation rate is not a new trend. Kentucky has historically had a lower labor force participation rate than the United States as a whole. There are many reasons why an individual would choose not to participate in the labor force. For those who did not work last year, almost half were retired. Others were going to school, taking care of family, or were unable to find a job. Less than 2% of individuals did not work last year for unspecified reasons. Compared to the United States, Kentucky has an exceptionally high percentage of individuals not participating in the labor force because of an illness or disability. The percentage of the population reporting a disability in Kentucky is 5 points higher than the nation, and in the eastern part of the state, many counties have over a quarter of their population reporting a disability. These areas also tend to suffer from a shortage of jobs, making it difficult to find work even for those who don't require special accommodations. There are 52 counties in Kentucky federally designated as labor surplus areas because there are persistently more available workers than jobs. For many people in Kentucky, non-participation in the labor force is not always a choice, but rather a consequence of systematic economic problems in their communities. Another factor driving both the increase of disabled Kentuckians and low labor force participation is the aging of the population. Older people are more likely to drop out of the labor force because illness prevents them from working or because they choose to retire. Current population projections show the proportion of the population aged 65 and older is expected to increase over the next 20 years, meaning the labor force participation rate will likely decline. If the labor force participation rate of only prime age workers is considered, those between age 25 and 54, Kentucky's labor force participation rate jumps 20 points and is closer to the national average. Two primary forces are driving the low labor force participation rate in Kentucky. One, Kentucky's low labor force participation rate is a consequence of its urban-rural divide. In metropolitan counties, the labor force participation rate is 65%, above the national average. However, in counties outside of metropolitan areas, the labor force participation rate is 52%, much lower than the national average. And two, as the baby boomer generation ages into retirement, the labor force participation rate is projected to decline. Older, sicker workers are more likely to leave the labor force entirely. The labor force participation rate is highly influenced by demographics and the availability of jobs. It is an important measure of employment opportunities that exist in the economy.